You ready, Casey? All right, roll call, Carol.
Nelson,
Here.
Ashcraft, Yulo,
Here.
Moore,
Here.
Peak.
Here. All right, thank you, Carol. I'd like to ask everybody please stand for the invocation and pledge allegiance. Dave, do you mind leading us here this evening, sir?
Father, we thank you for everything you give us, and we thank you for this day. Father, we ask that you bless each person that's here, give them wisdom to make the right decisions. And Father, we know that you place people in areas of authority, and so we ask you that they take into account the responsibility of this community and bring their best efforts to do what's right for your glory and for your honor. Father, we also ask that you bless them because of their volunteering to serve in this capacity. And Father, we ask you to bless their families as well. And Father, we thank you for the freedoms that we have here. And it hits home every time we turn on the news to see what's happening around the world, to realize as bad as we think things are here at times, we are blessed beyond measure to be in this country at this time. And Father, we thank you for that, and we ask that you bless those people that protect our freedoms. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, David. All right, we have no old business, so we'll move along to new business. We have agenda item 230801. This is application for zoning variance. We'll have a public hearing on this agenda item. If anybody wishes to speak, if you'd come up, Carol has a sign-in sheet. You can print your name and address, and we're glad to hear from you. They're requesting a zoning variance for minor encroachment into established wetland setback and wetland buffer. The location is 9769 Tanger Lane. Alan Duncan on behalf of Ashley Emerson. Casey, do you have a staff report or anything you'd like to add to that?
Mr. Chairman, just as a note, there are some minutes from the last meeting. I don't know if you want to look at that before this or go back and approve afterwards. But regarding this item, this is a location that you've looked at before. They did request a zoning variance previously in order to change the orientation of the house. If you remember, the Board of Adjustments denied that application. So since that time, they've applied for a building permit on the site. During that process, they did apply for a land disturbance permit, which required a wetland delineation because of potential wetlands on the site. That delineation that's showing up on the screen there did find wetlands on the northern lot line of this property. And you all have a excerpt from the Clean Water Ordinance for the city here. It's that legal size page. This applicable sections have been highlighted in it, but we do have a 30-foot undisturbed vegetated buffer from wetlands, as well as a 50-foot construction setback buffer, or a setback from wetlands. As you can see, this is a previous layout of the lot, but this does show the wetlands on the lot, which location of the wetlands makes it almost impossible to use the lot and to meet the wetland setback buffer. So they've requested a variance to the wetland buffer and the wetland setback. The shaded area on the north line there is where the location of the wetlands is. So as it stands now, the current setbacks on the lot are 30 feet on the front and the rear, and 10 feet on the side yard away from the road, 15 feet on the side yard adjacent to the road. Now, all those setbacks are determined based on the orientation of the house, so there could be multiple configurations of it, I guess. Here's another one. Although this one does show a reduced setback on the front yard, it does give you a better idea of the distance to the wetlands and the property line. I think that's 28 feet, I believe, from the wetlands to the corner of that proposal, which is past the 30-foot setback if this were the the orientation. Again, if you go back to the other orientation of the house, it's an even further encroachment into that because the house is wider than it is deep, basically.
All right, so basically, would you like to come up and make your statements and address the?
So yes, so the last time I was here, it was definitely because of preference. This time, I took my loss in stride, turned the house to Kingfisher, found out this inevitable fate of mine, and so that is why, if you'll, Casey, will you show the second one, the site plan? So this was my new proposal in efforts to stay away from the wetlands as much as possible because I was unaware of this the last time I came to the meeting. And so I am asking for a 20-foot setback in the front yard in attempt to stay away from it as much as possible, along with letting the house that I have already had plans for and had already got my building permit to be approved so I can build this house. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
All right, David, do you have anything you want to add? Let me, is this lot, so with this, the discovery of these wetlands, which evidently they weren't on the original site plan of the subdivision, yay or nay, and or with the fact that we now know these wetlands, would that make this lot to stay in all the setbacks, including the wetland setback, almost unbuildable or extremely difficult to get anything other than a shotgun house on there?
Yeah, it would make it, I don't want to say impossible, but very difficult to make anything of any size there, because the wetlands do require that 50-foot setback, which is 20 feet greater than the furthest setback that we currently have on the site. The property's only 107 feet wide, so you've still got other setbacks to meet on the front and the sides, which makes, you know, the house at the most, what would 30 feet wide or deep at the most.
If this was approved, would this be encroaching on the front setback as well as the rear, the way the house is oriented?
That's depending on how the board wants to rule on this. You wanna, David and I have had a few conversations about this previously, about the variance requested to the wetlands setback and buffer, still meeting the existing setbacks on the lot, so.
Want to make sure that we're clear about our numbers. Was that the previous? Okay. The previous one was the request. What was the variance request? What was the request?
So this was the previous application for the variance. This was a variance to the building setbacks, not the wetland setbacks. So that
All right.
was sort of the previous layout for that.
And does that show a 30-foot setback in the front?
Mm-hmm.
And the variance request was from the rear setback?
Yes.
All right, so I just want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges, and everybody's on the right page here. So this request was submitted to the Board of Adjustment at a previous meeting. Originally, they had the house orientation toward Kingfisher Court, but they wanted to rotate it and put it on toward Tanninger Lane, which there's no problem with that with choosing that way. They just have to make sure they design a house that fits the property that way. And so the request here was, and this was, I'm understanding, before the applicant realized that there were wetlands issues, was to give a variance from the rear setback because the house as designed is too large for the lot. We talked about a little bit about front setbacks, and I'll go into that further in just a second, but I just want you to see in this drawing that you previously rejected, it shows a 30-foot front setback, and then they were requesting a variance from the rear setback, but there was no real hardship to accommodate that, so you all denied that request. The subdivision plat sets forth those setbacks, which are actually more stringent than our underlying zoning, if I'm not mistaken, but that's what the subdivision plat provisions for that subdivision are. And so if you look at this next drawing that we're here on today, I do think that there is a reasonable basis to grant a variance to assist with this wetlands issue, because the 50-foot setback does eat into a pretty good size of the yard based on where the wetlands are. So if you look there, the setback line from the property line is 30 feet in the rear. The setback from the wetlands would be 50 feet, but you would count that from the wetlands. So it would go in, you can see that that point, I need one of those. This point right here from the property line to the house is roughly 35 feet. Measuring from this point right here, which appears to be the closest wetlands to the house, this is 28 feet. So in order to get the 50 feet, you'd have to come another 20 foot out here, which, as Tracy said, would give kind of a narrow house. And it could be done, clearly, but as long as y'all are okay with considering that hardship being this, because it's platted in the lot, then that would give some relaxation to this rear setback line here. There's another component of that. It's not just the setback of 50 feet, it's the non-disturbing area. So if you did the 30-foot non-disturbing area, you'd be somewhere, this is 28.4. So if you wanted to make sure you had 30 foot of non-disturbance, you'd give a variance to here to allow for that. Okay? So there's two options. If you want to make sure you have at least 30 feet or close to 30 feet and give relaxation from the setback, you could either say, okay, we're going to make you this 30-foot setback also be the wetlands setback and the non-disturbance area here. If you wanted to do that, to give so that they would have the ability to utilize the whole constructible area on the lot. Or you could say, well, I'm okay with giving you rest from the 50 foot, but I want that non-disturbance area to still be 30 feet. And so you might give an additional 1 foot 6 inches here. Okay? And if you did that, in order for them to have the same size building pad, you might consider giving, this says 20 foot, but actually the front setback is 30 feet. And so you might consider, if you did that, you might give an extra 1.5 foot here. But I don't know why, under the circumstances, you all would give an additional 10 feet on the front to accommodate this request. Am I making sense? Long story short, this house is too big for this property, and as designed. And so if you give a relaxation of the wetlands area to accommodate and allow for the same footprint, she still wouldn't necessarily be able to build this house on this pad. Well, only about a foot, depending on what you did, only about a foot and 6 inches.
The front setback is only 20 feet?
The front setback is 30. She's asking that it be allowed to go to 20. My point of it is, if you all agree to grant a variance of some form, either to here or to here, then you ought to if you grant it to here, then she's got the same building pad she would otherwise have, except she's showing a 20-foot setback, which would not be needed. If you grant to an additional 1.5 feet, then you wouldn't give 10 foot. You'd only give about 1.5 feet. And you ask, why is that important? Casey tells me that all the other houses on this street have been built, and they're lined up on the 20-foot line. So this house would be out further if you did that.
All the other houses are built on the 20-foot front setback or the 30?
That 20-foot doesn't exist. That's what's on our drawing.
Okay, I know.
It's a
but
30-foot
I thought I
setback.
heard you just say the other houses are built at 20 feet.
Oh, no, 30.
And not 30.
They're built
Is
at
that what
30.
y'all heard? Okay, y'all
I'm
heard the
sorry.
20 as well.
I'm sorry. I
Okay.
apologize. Let me make sure I'm saying this right. According to Casey, they're all built at the 30-foot setback on the street. She's asking for this to be extended to the additional 20 feet. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, in theory, if we grant a variance to allow for relief from the wetland setback, that does not necessarily require an additional 10 foot on the front to give that variance, depending on how you do it. Does that make sense? You were asked to give a variance from the back lot line, which you turned down, to allow for the larger size house. Now you're being asked to give a variance on the front because of the wetlands. And so the question is, I think you ought to figure out a way to maintain the existing building pads so that there's plenty of room to build a house. It doesn't necessarily mean that you allow more than is necessary to accommodate the wetlands. Is that fair? Am I explaining that right now?
I think. So
Okay.
what I'm gathering is, as is, that would be the 30-foot setback from the front, then would be grant a variance for the rear because of the wetlands.
Yes.
I am more inclined to go with that than granting a front variance, which we denied a rear variance before we knew about wetlands, because it's not a hardship and an unbuildable lot. Unless we don't grant either or, then it's gotten down to an extremely narrow lot,
Yeah.
which would require at that time a shotgun house, with what I call, if you aren't familiar with that, it's a very narrow, straight-through kind of a house, whereas it would be kind of a unique, one-of-a-kind detraction probably from all the other houses in that subdivision.
Yeah.
Is that,
I agree.
is that,
I agree. So the question is, and it can be done in a number of ways, but let me cut to the chase. Maybe I can do a little better. If there was no wetlands, you've already denied a variance once. If there was no wetlands issue and we weren't back here today, and everything was like it was, you still couldn't build that house.
Yes, it fits the other direction. Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, if it switch other direction, I'm sorry.
you want to come up to the microphone and go ahead and state your rebuttal?
And I apologize if we got the numbers wrong, but we're going off the drawing here. So which way does it fit?
It fits Kingfisher direction. So when I lost the first time, I took it in stride and turned it. So had the wetlands not been an issue, the house fits. It fits. So that's my problem, is I've already invested all of this money into a house that fits on this lot, and then I discovered the wetlands issue that I knew nothing about. This is where my hardship is really coming in, because I've already paid for the engineered plans, I've already paid for the house plans, I've already paid for the appraisal. I mean, I have dumped money into this, and I was not aware of this. Yes, the first time was 100% for preference. It was. But once I was made aware of this issue, it's causing more than just the setback line issue, because I'm just trying to build a house for my two kids, this is becoming so difficult. And I'm trying to make this house that I've already invested so much money in fit, and it's only 1,900 square feet. And I really am trying to make it work. I've tried flipping it, I've tried moving it, and these were the setback lines I was originally, so let me start over. The setback lines that I was originally given from the city, this house fit both directions. So I did not design a house intentionally for this lot that was too big. That was never the intention, that was never the plan. When my architect called back to verify these lines, I got 3 different sets of lines. So I got a set from Casey, a set from the inspector, and then a set from a different person. And so whenever we called to verify, that's when we found out there was an issue after this house had already been developed. And so this is where my major issue is coming in, because I took my loss in stride and turned the house. I did not know there was wetlands on this property. I understand the legality of all of it, but even if you approved the 30-foot setback in the back, I can do a 25-foot setback in the front and the house still fits. So it wouldn't look that far off or anything. I'm not trying to do anything unpractical here. I'm just trying to build a house for my family. And I feel like it's just been hoop after hoop after hoop, and after setback and disappointment, and that's where I'm at today with this. I would have never bought this lot under the intentions that I was given, because the plot lines and the plat lines, they're two different numbers. So, I mean, it's been an issue since I bought it, and I did ask before I bought this lot about the wetlands. So whenever this issue come up, I was 100% shocked. So at this point, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to fight for something to save myself money, and that I think is right. But I mean, I 100% can't do that by myself. I need y'all's help.
Okay. So you're saying that this house will fit, to your knowledge, if you have a relief from the wetland setback, correct? And then continue with the 30-foot, the standard setback in the front, the 30-foot. So if we give you relief from the wetland setback, you should be good to go. Is that what I think I heard you say?
Well, no, sir, because I need a 25-foot setback for the front yard, because once I flipped it, it only hangs over 4 feet. If you've seen all the lines from the other direction from the first one, I would need a 25-foot setback in the front yard. But if you turn it Kingfisher, it fits.
And
I would be more inclined to give, if I were to vote in the affirmative, to one variance, encroach into the wetlands a little bit closer to keep the front setback intact with all the other houses in the subdivision, if it would fit that way. I don't want to grant you something that's still not going to work.
Yes, sir.
But when it comes down to whatever the setbacks were, that should have been when you bought that property, I would imagine, on your deed, that the surveyor or was it a draftsman or an architect?
It was an architect.
The architect should have picked up on what them setbacks were when he pulled up your lot. And so, I mean, that's how that normally works.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, and no one's trying to say that anybody's trying to pull anything over on anybody at all. Go back to the orientation that you had there before, where you said it fit, and it does appear to fit in this orientation, but this was not on the orientation that was submitted. This was discovered and presented by you all later. And that 50-foot setback would have applied to this as well. So it would not fit this way either. Is that right, Casey? On this lot. If you go back to the other drawing. I'm
I
sorry.
was talking about before we were aware of the wetlands.
No question. Before you were aware of the wetlands, this orientation, I believe, would have worked, right, Casey? Before y'all were aware of the wetlands, this orientation would have worked. But if the
And at this point, excuse me, with that orientation, the only thing it's encroaching is the wetland setback, correct?
correct, and that goes.
Then why did she ask for a variance?
Wait, because there's a driveway here, right? Yes, sir. So that driveway goes way over here. So that would be a lot of a variance there. So turning the house, show the application that's been given today. All right, so if this house, if you showed a 30-foot setback as opposed to a 20-foot, and those wetlands didn't exist. Right. Right. So this house without the wetlands would not fit within these setbacks, so you would have to give a variance in order for this house to be built, even if there were no wetlands, which you denied at the last meeting, to give a rear setback variance. And so I do clearly think, even though y'all denied the request to allow for additional space to fit that house, I do think, since the wetlands have been discovered recently, that is an issue that cuts in this yard pretty good. And so if you all granted a variance from the non-disturbance area and the wetland setback to the rear property line, that'd give about 25 feet probably there of space between the house and the wetlands. You would not have to give a variance up front because you're leaving the lot like it was. The buildable area is the same as what she purchased.
But see, it's not allowed to even face Kingfisher anymore, so I don't even have a fight for the side that whenever it even did fit, I don't even have a fighting chance anymore.
Well,
It's taken away.
and I understand that, but that's not because of the city, that's because of this wetlands that was not delineated.
Yes, sir,
Until
that I was
recent-
unaware of as well.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so if that had been submitted with your application, then that first house never would have been approved either. So, I mean, I don't know who was doing your drawings for you, but that wetlands delineation, if it had been shown on the first one, then that would have been caught too, because you couldn't build the driveway you wanted to build that close to the wetlands. So I think we're all in favor of trying to help, and I do think that there needs to be a variance. And the question would be, if y'all are okay with doing the, back to the 30-foot and leaving, I guess that's roughly
28.4.
Yeah, well, it's not, yeah, not quite that far. To the property line would be probably about 20 feet or so. If you wanted to try and maintain a 30-foot, you might give a foot and 4 here. And if you did that, if you took away some back here, then I do think you ought to give some up front. But if you just stayed with this, that would give her the benefit of her bargain in what she purchased, for sure. Well, I mean, she purchased the property with these go back to the other house, does that show 30 and 30? Where does it show 30 and 30?
If you go to the other one, I think it has more, the old one. Yes.
Does that show 30 and 30?
Yes, sir.
So is this 30?
Yes, sir.
Is this 30?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is what she bought. This setback right here. Okay? That's what she bought and is able to build on. Not taking into account the wetlands. This right here. She asked for a rear setback variance because the house doesn't fit here. The new drawing basically shifts the house forward to the back, this part right here, to about right here, and now we're asking for a 20-foot variance on the front.
Well, in
I do
this,
think there needs to be some help with the wetland setback, but the question is, do we help enough with the wetland setback, or do we also help so she can build the larger house? Y'all turned down the larger house previously as a reason for a variance. So the question is, why should you grant more than is required to address the wetlands issue, I guess?
I would think that, this would work if, and all we're doing then is giving her a variance from the wetlands. Whatever that distance may be, that's what it is. And then she stayed in all the setbacks. And then you could build that house.
well, I would need,
Did you
in
redraw the
reality, I
house?
need
Is that
4 feet. I promise you, I don't care where you give it to me. Front yard, backyard, I need the 4 feet. Because when I came to you the first time, I was under the impression that if it didn't fit one way and I lost, it was okay, it fit the other way. Well, now, it's a whole different ballgame.
Well, no, I don't think that's what what I was intending. What I was intending is you bought a lot that's buildable, and it shows where it's buildable at, and that's what you need to draw your house at. Just like anybody else that buys any other lot. There it is, it's in black and white. There's the setback lines, design a house that fits in on that lot. That's what I was under the impression, and so that's still the way I look at it. But now we have wetlands that have popped up that you didn't know about, nobody else knew about, so I would be more inclined at this point to grant you a variance due to the fact that the wetlands was unknown by everybody, it appears.
Okay.
But that's the way I see it. And so this would work, and I don't know how many feet it's going to be, but it will allow you to build your house and still stay in the 30-foot setback from the street.
Let's make sure we're clear. Allow you to build a house, not necessarily
Build
that
a house, or build that house, I would say, even, or any other house for that matter. Now it's a good buildable lot, not something that's so narrow. Now, what we need to determine, I would say, is what that distance is. And then we also have to have a public hearing, so we'll continue on, and then we'll have our public hearing. I don't think there's anybody
And
else here.
before you start the public hearing, there's one other proposal too that we ought to consider, is that, again, that wetlands is probably changed over time and enlarged as things happen. And so one of the reasons that we make setbacks like that is to allow for movement and change of wetlands. Well, in this case, she's going to be building her house, pretty close to that and not getting the advantage of the setback. So I would say as part of the conditions of this approval is that if she accepts that and builds, that the application now needs to be conditioned on her and the owner of the property agreeing to indemnify and hold the city harmless from any claims that might arise from flooding or whatever else. She'll be building the house knowing that that's there, and that would not be something that the city would be responsible for.
Okay. All right, and she's already paid for a building permit?
I don't
No,
think
there's
so.
no permit been pulled, just a land disturbance.
Land use permit.
She had applied for both of them, I believe, but the land disturbance wasn't approved because of this issue, so that held up the building permit. Is that correct? Neither one have been issued.
And our goal here is to try to figure out a way to help. I think you should consider giving some relief, but it's got to be relief that's based on the lot itself and not based on a hardship that's self-imposed. That's one of the requirements that we have to reach, is that it has to be based on topography, geography, something that's beyond the control of the owner, something that's not self-imposed. So if you give an easement that allows for the same building lot they would have had otherwise, then giving more to allow for a larger size house is a little different. And that's where you have to be careful, because neighbors and someone else might complain too, and we want to be able to administer that correctly.
All right, we're going to cease this discussion at this moment and have our public hearing. Public hearing's open. Anybody wish to speak? All right, public hearing's closed. We can continue our discussion now. All right, so Casey, do we have any idea, what kind of footage are we talking about then if we're looking at a rear setback variance to the wetland, encroaching into the wet? And is this visible water? It's not?
No, I've been to the lot several times. I've never even seen water standing on it.
Is the lot higher than the wetlands, or is it all kind of level there, or?
It's a pretty level lot. No, sir, not that I'm aware of.
In your design, you might take into account to make sure that that pad is elevated to give you a little more freeboard.
Yes, sir.
It's not in a flood zone, but the movement of the wetlands shows you that it isn't moving around a little bit. So you just want to make sure that you and your design professional take that into account so that you don't get in a situation where you're being flooded.
Casey, can you go back to that last picture where it showed what it could fit if we gave? Okay. The one that had the 30-foot, okay, that's it, so
Is that the 30-foot front?
we're looking at from where the rear of that house is right now is 23 feet, 8 inches from the property line. But that would be a lot closer to the wetlands. So it would be granting, what, about a 20-something foot variance from the wetland?
Well, I think the easier thing to do from a conceptual standpoint is to try to at least maintain the 30-foot here. And so I think what you would do is you would either come to this 30-foot line, or if you wanted to give a couple of feet to get a full 30-foot from the wetlands, but you're talking about 28 right now, so it's not that close. So an easy way to do it would say we will grant a variance from the setback, so that it is the wetland setback. It will be 30 foot from the property line, and also the undisturbed area would be 30 foot from the property line. And allow that spacing there.
And that's basically what would be the original
Yeah,
setbacks, except we've just taken out the wetlands, so
You'd be
that's
lining.
basically what she bought was, and now she doesn't have to worry about the wetlands.
You'd be lining up 3 setbacks on the same original setback line, basically.
Okay. All right, anybody else have any?
I had just a couple of questions. David, did you say that there was a different requirement imposed from the city than the subdivision on the wetlands? Did you say that there was a larger setback?
There's 2 setbacks in the city regulations. One is that you set back 50 feet from the wetlands. And then the second is that there's a non-disturbance area within 30 feet of the wetlands. And so those 2 apply. In this case, in order to try to maintain the original setbacks, to give an opportunity to have, a wide house and not be limited by that, if you just said that all the setbacks will line up to this line, the non-disturbance areas, you wouldn't be able to disturb between there. The setbacks would be there from the wetlands, but that would be the line.
Can we go to the picture that she said that it fit?
Which one?
No, the one that she said, is that the one where you say it fits? Okay, so
It
the setback is for the front of the house, the 30-foot setback is for the front of the house, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's from the front of the house, because I just see let me see if I can get my pointer working. Maybe not. So on Tanager Lane side right here, that's not the front of the house, so there's only required a 15-foot setback on that side if she builds it in that direction, correct? But if she turns the house on this way, and the front of the house is on Tanager, then it's a 30-foot setback.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
I just want to make sure I understand that.
Yeah, but since the
Okay.
house is oriented this way, the 30-foot setback's
The
here.
30-foot setback is only from the front of the house.
And the
Okay?
rear, and the rear.
Okay, so, and the setback, so if she fits right there, and we give her a variance, and everything on the front fits, everything on the side fits, everything on this side fits, so the only thing that doesn't fit is within the wetlands right there, and she is back, the only thing in this picture, is that just the wetlands is the only issue in this picture?
The only issue, if the wetlands did not exist, I think, Casey, this orientation would work.
Correct.
The problem with this orientation, now that we know the wetlands is here, with the house turned this way, on the other way, you have a 28.4-foot distance from her, or about 25-foot distance from the wetlands.
Okay.
Here, this is a driveway. And so it's almost in the wetlands here. You couldn't do this at all. I mean, there'd be no setback here. This is supposed to be a non-disturb area. There'd be no non-disturb area.
Okay, so the driveway cannot go in another
Right.
place?
You'd have to give a much more variance, and then, like I say, you're almost in the wetlands. I'm not sure you could do that.
Can you show me where the garage is in this home? That is, the garage is on that side. So it's not on this end. So could your draftsman or your architect move that so that the garage is on this side, and that you could, and flop it so that the garage is on this side where the little bump out is, and bring your driveway in over here on this side, and then we could grant a variance. We could grant a variance for 1.6 or whatever it is with a hold harmless on there, and she could move her garage over there. That way she doesn't have to disturb the back area with a driveway.
What if,
You could drive straight in off of Tanagers as
That's
well.
correct. That's
It'd be a
correct.
lot less concrete, a lot less money.
That's correct.
I'm misunderstanding. Say that again now?
She could drive in, since my pointer's not working.
She's talking about flopping he's talking about flopping the house.
Okay, yes.
Just leave it the way it sits, facing Kingfisher, but just flop it. And then the driveway would be coming in off of Tanger's Lane, straight in. The garage would
Oh,
be,
I see, okay,
that'd be the garage.
right. Yeah. Yeah, so the garage could be here, where the
Well-
pointer is. The garage could be here, this could be the driveway coming in off of Tanager, right here.
But it's only 15 feet off the property line, so your car wouldn't even, you couldn't park a car in your driveway. Because you've only got 15 feet to the edge of the.
Casey
She's
and
got
I-
driveway right here. That could be driveway, all that's grass, all that could be driveway. Right, you can't move the garage over to this side of the house?
Well, you can flop the whole house,
Right,
but there's the garage here, so that puts the garage here. If you're gonna, then you gotta turn it around and have
Right,
the front of the
yeah.
house back here, so that's not gonna work.
yeah, I'm just trying to, yeah.
You can't,
I mean, I'm with Mr. Chairman. I mean, I would be willing to grant a variance on the wetlands with a hold harmless against the city, but not a setback from normal standards.
Is this, Casey, should we not have caught this at the planning level as far as the wetlands and the setback? No?
even if we did, this appears to be a change as things have grown over time, but no, that's not something that would have normally come up in that process, I don't believe, right?
Now, like I said, the only reason it really came up was with the land disturbance permit application, and that's because that's one of the things we check for with that permit. It's not something that we, are looking for on every lot until we get to the actual construction process, because then you have to take the disturbance into consideration with that, so. And they may not have been located on the plat when the lot was originally developed. Wetlands change over time as, drainage increases and development increases in the area. The floodplains change, the drainage, or floodplains widen, drainage areas change, so this could be totally different than what it looked like when the subdivision was developed.
Mr. Chairman, could we make, I'm not asking to make a motion, but I'm asking a question before we make a motion. Could we make a motion to allow her to go back to her architect and make some changes to the house? If per se there were a variance made with the wetlands, to give her architect an opportunity to maybe make some architectural changes and then let her come back and ask for a variance?
Mr.
I don't
Chairman,
think
if-
that would be up to us to require her or ask her to go back and make changes. It's up to us to either grant a variance, and even if she didn't build there and sold it, then since we granted that variance, it could go to somebody else that wanted that lot, that decided that variance helped them, they could build on it. So that would be the...
Yeah, one way or the other, she needs some definitive help as to what y'all are willing to do, and that way she can take it to the architect and see what they can do to address it.
was that this is what we got to work with. Now, I think, I haven't heard from y'all, but I think from the folks I have heard from, we're in favor of what you just said, giving her some relief. We want to give you some relief. But there again, it has to be to the effect that it doesn't affect your neighbors and other people down the road that want to come just because, like when you first came, aesthetically, I want to get into the setbacks. I want a bigger house than what this lot allows for, so.
I want a bigger house by any means. I just wanted a normal size house that is, decent to live in, and trying to get this done. I wasn't trying to build the Taj Mahal by any means or anything like that.
I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to imply that you were.
No, I understand. No offense whatsoever. I'm just trying to make it so it doesn't cost me any more money, and I was under the impression if it fit one way, it fits the other way, and obviously that's not the case. But can I ask for something else? Is there any way possible that if I can get the normal setback lines, but maybe we can meet in the middle, instead of 4 feet, can I have 2? Because that's a less of a modification that I would have to make. I'm just trying to start building, because I'm really in a crunch, and I figured I would have already started by now, and literally it's been a nightmare.
I don't mind giving her the 4 feet in the back or whatever it takes to get you.
Yeah, it's 4
but
feet. This house will fit. If I get 4 feet, that's all I need. I don't need.
From the
I don't need an inch
Yeah.
extra.
Keep the 30-foot setback from the front, all the other setbacks in place, and give her relief from the wetlands. David, does that make sense? And that's what I'm willing to do.
But what she's asking you for is doing what you just said, and then giving her 4 more feet in addition to that. And I don't think that's what y'all been in
Yes.
favor of. That's what she's asking for.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we've already determined, no. We're willing to give you relief to be able to build and, with the wetlands. Now, I say no, but I'm just one vote.
No, you're fine. I understand.
So, the public hearing, has it been open and closed, I guess? So if you all, hearing what you're saying, if it doesn't sound like it sounds like y'all are willing to give relief from the wetlands, but not an additional 4 feet to accommodate for the size of the house. Is that fair? Okay. So with that said, would you like for me to make a recommendation? Okay.
Denied a variance just due to the fact that we want a variance from that setback. So I can't see change, I personally am not going to change, what I thought at that for that variance now. But I will do the fact that wetlands have come up, give her relief from that and help on that. And I hope that really helps you. So yes, David, if you don't, now that's just me. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add, or? All right, David, you want to make a recommendation?
So due to the hardship caused on this property in the event that the wetland setbacks were enforced at the 50-foot setback and the 30-foot undisturbed area, and the impact it would have on this lot, the buildable area of this lot, and the fact that the proposed change would not appear to affect the nature of the development, at least as it relates to the front right-of-way, then the recommendation would be that you approve a variance from the 50-foot setback from wetlands to state that the wetland setback will be the same as the 30-foot setback from the property line, and then grant a variance from the 30-foot non-disturbance area so that the non-disturbance area will be the same as the 30-foot setback from the property line. So in effect, the wetland setback, non-disturbance area, and 30-foot building setback will all be the same. That'll be 30 foot from the rear of the property line, with the orientation of the house, with the front of the house being on Tanninger Lane.
And that gives her the same buildable site she had originally, and the wetlands have kind of disappeared from that.
Well, they haven't disappeared. You've just relaxed it. And then as an additional condition, because of the fact that it appears these wetlands are moving some, that she would agree as a condition of that to indemnify and hold the city harmless from any claims that might arise as a result of building within that setback in those areas, or other conditions that might affect flooding and wetlands application to her property.
Does anybody wish to make a motion on David's recommendations there, so it will be worded exactly the way he just said?
Okay.
Does anybody
And with
wish
your
to make a
permission,
motion on that?
with your
And then
direction.
I'll ask for discussion. Okay, okay.
And at your direction, I'll prepare those documents for them to sign.
All right, do we have a motion on David's recommendation? All right, we'll have a motion. Do we have a second? All right. Carol, did you get that? All right, do we have any discussion on the motion?
Yes, okay, so the only question I have before I vote is, there's a difference between the non-disturbance setback and the regular wetland setback, correct? And if so, can you clarify
Yes.
why there's two different setbacks for
Yes.
that?
Can you go back to the other? Well, let's leave it right here. No, go back to the one that shows 30-foot front and 30-foot rear. Okay.
Because I don't want to cause her issues with
No.
the driveway later on either, so.
Well, this is not the house plan that she has showing right now, but this does correctly show the setbacks, okay? See where it says current? All right, so that line is proposed. That's what you all turned down at your previous meetings, and we're using this map because it's got the best depiction of the setbacks. And it shows a 30-foot front setback, okay? So this is what exists today without variance, okay? So if she can design a house that fits in that area, she can build it. The house that she's proposed at this point doesn't fit within that area, all right? Then you have the additional problem that now they've located wetlands on the property that kind of meander in this area. There's a 50-foot setback from the wetlands, so if that's the edge of the wetlands, you'd count off 50 feet, which would put that 50-foot line in here somewhere. So she could not build unless she started her house there and came forward to the 30-foot, which would be pretty narrow. So you all, it's proposed that you will grant a variance from the 50-foot setback back to the 30-foot setback. So now the building 30-foot setback and the wetlands 50-foot setback will now align the same, okay? The other wetland setback is a non-disturbance area. So here's the wetlands again. From the wetlands, you have a 50-foot setback, which would be out here, but you only have a 30-foot non-disturbance area. It's a little further back. So, but again, would cause a problem. And so if you're going to give relief, I would suggest that you give relief on both. And so now the non-disturbance area would also run to this 30 feet. So now what you're basically in effect doing is saying the 30-foot building setback will be here, unchanged. The 50-foot setback, you have a variance so that it comes back to this 30-foot line. And then the undisturbed area for the wetlands will also come back to this line. So whatever house that she could have built on this property, if there had been no wetlands, she'll be able to build.
All right, roll call, Carol. Any other discussion on the motion? All right, roll call, Carol.
Nelson,
Yes.
Ashcraft, Yulo,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Peak.
Yes.
All right, motion's approved. Mrs. Emerson, I hope the rest of your building project goes a whole lot smoother than what you've had to go through the first several months, and you don't have to spend another dime more than what you would have. And I'm sorry, I hate this for you. I know, you know, I'm sure you've heard it, building a house can be a nightmare, and for a lot of folks, it turns into one. So hopefully it'll go smooth from here on out. Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, we come to public participation. Anybody wish to speak? Closed. Anybody have any announcements they'd like to make? Well, I'd like to thank all of y'all for
I
coming.
need
Carol,
my
do you have
minutes
something?
approved. I need to know if the minutes are approved.
Oh, yeah, it approved. I
Oh.
didn't say approved? I'm so sorry. But, oh, okay. Yes, regular, does anybody have any changes or errors? Okay, motion stand approved as written. Thank you, Carol. Thank y'all so much. And we normally only have one of these every 4 or 5 years. We've met more now this year than we have in the past 5 or 10 years. So, thank you. No, I appreciate all y'all coming, but I hope I don't see you here again for another 4 or 5 years, but Lord only knows.